Раз, раз, раз. Так, все работает.
Everything is working. Dear participants, dear colleagues, I'd like to ask speakers of our workshop to come to a stage and take your seats. Good afternoon, dear friends. My name is Ramazan Janpisev. I'm very happy to see you on this workshop, which is dedicated to implementation of NDC 3.0 Kazakhstan. As you know, recently, government of Kazakhstan had adopted the updated responsibility obligations on the Paris Agreement, and we have updated obligations up to 17% until 2035. And the frame of the Paris Agreement, every country is updating every 5 years their obligations, and in the frame of our workshop, in the course of our workshop, we're going to consider key points on implementation of achieving NDC 3.0 until 2030. We're going to consider the national policy on inventory of the greenhouse emissions. We have seen that one of the differences and peculiarities third version of NDC, we have new sectors that are involved, adaptation to climate change, and more active engagement on the practices of land use, and it will need transparent system of MRV, and also one of the peculiarities of development of NDC 3.0. In terms of this work, the MAC analysis had been conducted. It is the analysis for the development of there had been the marginal abatement cost curve, which might become the most prioritized ones, that might become the emphasis for the update of the climatic obligations, and that would update our NDC from the previous versions. We're transitioning from declaration to real action. We're opening our seminar. Invite Anatoly Trifonov, who is country engagement specialist, international organization that is rendering technical assistance for updating. Anatoly, please, we would like to invite you. Do you hear me well? That is. Thank you so much, colleagues. Thank you, Ramazan, for these welcome remarks. Everything had been already mentioned. Well, you have 3 hours to think about, and I hope that we will have intensive day, and I hope that our audience will be engaged into the discussion, and our experts are here. It is the unique opportunity. Well, I represent also partnership in NDC. We are the source of the funding, first and foremost, and since this request had been sent to the partnership, none of the participants of the partnership couldn't mobilize the resources, so we had to finance directly through the partnership fund that had been established for this purposes. Our fund is not that big, and we have tough competition for the requests and applications that we could support. Why we decided to support this one? Because it is directed towards forming 2 key aspects. In the frame of the first component, there will be efficient monitoring, reporting and verification system in land use and forestry. Another component was the MAC analysis that had been mentioned that will allow to identify the priority measures in order to include it into Kazakhstani NDC, and which will be included into the implementation plan, which will allow us to track the progress. So every contribution will be identified, and in order to set ambitious goals. I am very happy that we have a wide panel of experts. We have NDPC experts, we have the government authorities. Jasıl Damu is the operator of the systems of the emissions trade, but you are the representative of the government, facilitator of the partnership. Aynur Kabaeva, thank you so much for your contribution and organization, and our colleagues from ECOGER, which is the Kazakhstan Association for Regional Environmental Initiatives, which had contributed into MAC analysis, and their contribution into the preparation and update of the NDC had been in a proactive way. Their contribution had been beyond the limits that they had, actually. Thank you so much. I would like to wish you productive discussion. Thank you, Anatoly. Well, as it had been voiced before, the development of the NDC 3.0 had been done with the support of the international partners. Today, we also have in this workshop a representative of the Asian Center on Readiness to Emergency Situations, Bill Holler, who is the head of the program development of the Asian Center, the headquarters, which is in Bangkok. Mr. Bill, we would like to give you floor. Bill, please.
Deep apology. My Russian is really bad, so please allow me to use English to give this welcome remark. So dear colleagues, partners, it's really my great pleasure to be able to be here with you today. And I think a big congratulations to the government of Kazakhstan on the announcement of the NDC 3.0. And on the outside, I really want to share our deep appreciation to the Ministry of Ecology and Natural Resources, and of course, our close partner, NDC Partnership, for giving us the opportunity and have the trust for us to playing a supporting role to have this come to a reality. It is their leadership and their commitment that really help to push the process forward. So as the country moved from looking at target setting into the implementations, the focus increasingly turns into systems, data, institutions, and investment required to deliver the results. For Kazakhstan, effective implementations of the NDC 3.0 will depend on three major foundations. First, a stronger national greenhouse gas inventory systems, robust monitoring, reporting, and verification arrangements for the land use sector, and clear prioritizations of mitigation actions and investments. So today, we do have the opportunity to look at our shared understandings, to review the progress, and to identify the practical next steps to support the implementation of the Kazakhstan NDC 3.0s. So this session really directly contribute to the Regional Ecological Summit 2026, the goals of climate transitions, resilience to environmental and natural risk, and the mechanism for achieving environmental efficiency while supporting the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal. So we're very much looking forward to share the experiences, the lesson learned from our projects, and we very much look forward to your contributions, the exchange of ideas, and see how we can really further strengthen the implementation of the NDC 3.0 for Kazakhstan. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Ho, and разрешите...
Allow me to invite General Director of the Association EKG, Kabjan Ruslan Khayrulovich. Good afternoon, dear participants and colleagues. I think that there are not many people here, I understand, but at the same time, we have experts, best experts who have vast experience. And last year, we had been preparing to COP30 in Brazil. And one of the documents that Kazakhstan had to prepare was the updated NDC. And each COP gives certain tasks, sets objectives, and sets the bar. For Brazilian COP, Kazakhstan had to work on document which would reflect our objectives for nearest period, which is 5 years. And our obligations on greenhouse emissions from 15 to 17% had been increased from 15% to 17%, and that is fixed in NDC document. And on the session on MAC analysis, our experts will show those sectors and approaches that we had integrated into this document. We wanted to develop a document that would be more actionable in sense of those things that both government and business could use. And the ambition, we have set quite ambitious goals, but we think that they're achievable. We have to have, in order to do that, we have to have the political will, both from the government side as well as from the enterprises. And we want also the civil societies to have a voice and amplify that voice. And after adopting this document, we hope to see the real fruits of this document. So I would like to extend gratitude to organizers again and participants of this session for the interest that you have paid. And I hope that this session will be useful for all. And I hope that you will also convey and distribute, disseminate all the information that you will learn from here. Thank you. Thank you so much, Rustam Khayrulovich. Now we would like to start our main part of seminar. As I have already mentioned, the key goal of today's event is to consider the updated NDC and what government procedures are there, and what is the foundation for the. And of course, here we shall note that priority is the quality of input data. Issue of the approach of national system of policy for inventory of data in order to provide evaluation and monitoring of the progress of the climate goals. And in order to do that, we would like to invite Dana Kasienova with presentation, Director of the Department for Inventory, Joint Stock Company, Jasıldamu, our national operator of the system of the emissions trade. And I would like to remind you the format to our participants and speakers. And there will be 5 presentations. After that, we will have Q&A session. Thank you so much to organizers for giving a big portion of time. We don't have any limits to speakers, but it'll be great if we could not, let's say, bore our audience, so that presentations wouldn't be more than 20 minutes, so that we could have time also for Q&A. Dana, please, the floor is yours.
Как удобно, можно с трибуны, можно с места, как удобно.
As you wish, you can speak from podium or from your place. Hello, distinguished participants, dear speakers. I would like to congratulate all of us with the conducting of this event. This is for the first time when we have such a large-scale ecological event, and I want to congratulate our people for conducting this event on this high level. Again, I want to congratulate you and thank organizers for inviting us. Today, I represent I present you national inventory system for greenhouse gases, specifically about land use change F or LULUCF. As you know, Kazakhstan is an active participant of Paris Agreement, and annually Kazakhstan prepares a report on greenhouse gases within Framework Convention on Climate Change. Our national reporting is prepared annually on greenhouse gases, as I've mentioned, and we have the specific reporting table CRT. Annually, Kazakhstan presents national or submits national reports on April 15th. This year, we have already submitted our report over for the period, and once every 2 years, we have international assessment or evaluation. So last year, Kazakhstani national experts passed through this specific evaluation or assessment, and international experts declared that we improved our reporting. So we covered all these issues and comments by 90%. This report has 5 sectors of economy: energy, industry, agriculture, land use, and waste. So land use change, and forestry is one of the main sector where so this sector is really relevant for our topic today. And here on the slide you can see the link. So using this link you can see our report. So LULUCF sector is using specific methodology. Thank you very much. We prepare our report and our experts use the guidelines from 2006 and the other document from 2017. But there is also updated version of 2019. This sector, LULUCF, has 6 main categories. So forestry, land, pasture, some other areas. So you see here also some swamps and some other areas. This is presented on slide. When we prepare our climate report, main actors here are the Committee of Forestry and Wildlife, Kazakh Forestry Enterprises, Kazakh Aviation Base in case of forest fires. So the information is provided by Committee on Land Resources, also Agrochemical Service, and their documents are different reports on the use of lands of Kazakhstan. So speaking about pasture or grazing land, pasture land, that's also one of the most important part and sector, and also different hay-making areas. So we also receive all the information from our committee. Then, when we speak about forest fires, Ministry of Emergencies provides all this information. This year, we received information from Kazakhstan Garыш Sapары. So the information, like the satellite data, was given from Kazakhstan Garыш Sapары. This year, UNDP provided great support. They invited international experts, and last year we had review, but the main comments was the following one. So we received as for tier 1, tier 2, we received recommendations that we need to present metrics of land use also on the high level. Before we presented metrics using tier 1, so the specific recommendation was given with regard to our approach, so that we would move to level 2 or tier 2. And again, I can say that we've achieved good results, because this year in our national report we submitted the metrics on land use, where we took into account not only land plots of these categories, but also some lands that are coming to land use from some other categories. As Kazakhstani, and we also see some other categories, for example, arable land and so on. So due to this recalculation process, the transparency increased, and nowadays, or this year, we presented new format, and our sector, this year, our sector, LULUCF, was recognized as carbon sink, greenhouse gas sink. We have moved ahead. However, there is always room for improvement, and now there are still some concerns. So we need to collect more precise data about some lands that are changing their categories. So when we built these land use metrics nowadays, national experts, they use their own assumptions and the data presented to them. But maybe in future, when we speak about lands that could change its category, I mean, if we would receive more specific data on the lands that might use this category type, we would be able to present this information more accurate, and we would be able to do the assessment in a better way. So data, collection of necessary data, and measurement of CO2 in soil. So of content of carbon in soil. So that to conduct full assessment of soil carbon, we need to have not only statistical data, we need also to have different tools. At all meetings where I participate, I always say to different state bodies, especially to Ministry of Agriculture, I am saying that we have some specific categories of land, and where we have lots of accumulation of carbon, and these are lands that is considered fallow, and the Ministry of Agriculture shall take it into account. We need also to improve the control procedures. Nowadays, we conduct assessment, bottom-up approach. It's a kind of ground monitoring of statistical data. But to verify and to improve our system, we need to implement top-down approach. When we use satellite data. However, these data would not be fully transparent and accurate. However, for verification, top-down approach is considered as the required approach for our sector. Thank you for your attention, and if there are any questions, I am happy to provide my answers. Thank you so much. Dana, I have a brief question while you are still here. Could you tell us why now all focus is given to the LULUCF sector? Is it related with the fact that this sector was less known to us, or maybe we see here great potential to achieve our climate goals? I mean, why the focus is here now? Thank you very much. It's a very good question. I guess nowadays this sector is widely discussed due to implementation of mechanisms of carbon markets. As for Kazakhstan, this, due to the fact that our country has big areas and natural resources that are also quite rich, especially when we speak about grazing areas or pastures land. That's why I think this sector, LULUCF, is the relevant one. Thank you very much, Dana. That's true. We see that transparency and inventory system is developed, and it is conducted in a sustainable way. New approaches, new technologies are adopted. We see that you use also digital technologies, remote surveying or sensing technologies, and of course, it increases the accuracy of data. So the work that you do, Dana, is really one of the key moments in our climate policy. The report that our country submits to the UNFCCC, then all this data is taken for developing other different initiatives, climate programs, projects, and forecasts, and so on. So thank you so much, Dana, for your work. And of course, we see that land use sector is of great significance, and even today we saw these results on reassessment, and this sector from net emittent became the carbon absorber, we can say, or carbon sink. So, and of course, it plays a great role in helping our country to achieve our goals, our targets. We need to improve everything. We need to improve approaches to carbon markets. We need to improve our monitoring system at the country level and at the regional level. So today, within a separate session on adaptive practices of land use, the Committee on Land Resources said that at the country level, the specific digital monitoring program is developed on studying the carbon content in soil. So everything is digitized, and of course this would support our activities in the reporting. We continue our workshop, and now with regard to the basis of MRV, from satellite data to the reporting on greenhouse gases, I would like to invite here the senior researcher and of information systems, spatial informatics group, Arte Portinga. Arte, please.
It would be better for you to take a speech because of the screen on your side.
So thanks a lot for the committee for giving me the opportunity to present of the work, some of the work that we did, and the previous presentation is really music to my ears because there were some gaps that were identified in terms of looking at land cover, looking at land use. And today for you I have two presentations. The first one is more on MRV as a framework. The second one is on the specific analysis that we did for Kazakhstan. Because I think not everyone here in the room is specifically familiar why we do MRV. And as we have heard in the NDC, there are different components that we look at. We look at the MAC analysis, so we look at what have been the emissions or what are the current emissions from, for example, the industry. But as was mentioned here, emissions from land cover are also very important. So if you think about countries like Brazil, countries like Indonesia, there is a huge amount of deforestation. So there is a lot of emissions in those countries that actually comes from land cover conversions from forest into other land use. And as was just discussed or explained, there is also a lot of opportunity for storing information inside the landscape. So if you start planting forests, if you start forest restoration programs, a lot of the carbon can actually be stored inside the landscape. And that's why we have very specific guidelines on how we do MRV. So what does MRV stand for? It stands for Measure, Report, Verify. That are the three different steps that are very critical. It's also becoming more and more important in specific compliance frameworks. And it's very important that this is done in a very systematic way, that it can be repeated by, for example, independent auditors, and that it provides, that is grounded in reality. That's also very important. If you look at historical reports from, for example, different countries on their land cover resources, on the amount of deforestation, we find that there is always a mismatch between what has been reported and what actually went on. So these specific standards are very critical, that we follow the right steps in doing the type of reporting. And it also builds trust, because these same frameworks are, for example, also used in voluntary carbon markets. So if a country wants to engage in selling carbon credits, the MRV reporting or the FREL reporting is very critical, because you need a closed system where everything that's reported in, for example, the forest emission reference level are in the NDC matches up with the different projects that you have in the country. So if you have in a country different carbon projects that do, for example, on afforestation, reforestation, or restoration, it's very important that these numbers that are reported by the projects do actually match with the NDC, do actually match with the other numbers. And that builds trust with donors, investors, and carbon markets. So what we typically start with, we do this type of work in different countries from different perspectives. Usually it's supporting with the FREL. In this case, it's specifically for the NDC, but the workflow that is implemented is very similar. So we first look at what exists. We already saw in the previous presentation on different accounting that was already done regarding land cover. We used some of those data sets. We looked at it very carefully. But what currently doesn't exist is an annual system for doing satellite-based monitoring. So no nationally consistent land use, land cover time series exists. And our expertise lies specifically in using satellite data and extracting land cover information from satellite data using sophisticated artificial intelligence technologies. And we can do that for different years. So we don't only do that for a single year, for example, 2024, 2025, but we can also go back in history and we can make a comparison between different years and then see what is going on. So that was from the first analysis that we did. That was our recommendation. It's okay, we look at the current data sets, the training data sets that are available, but we are also interested in what has been done, what has happened historically, and we're going to use all the different satellite data sets that are available, and we're going to provide yearly maps and then look at change specifically. These data sets are very critical, as I already mentioned. Under UNFCCC, we have the FREL reporting, we have the NDC reporting. Under the IPCC guidelines, it's specified how this accounting needs to be done. But also in the BTR and the national communications, it's important that there is one consistent methodology. So what we propose here is, and what we present here, is a methodology that is aligned with the IPCC best practices on creating land cover map, on looking at land cover change. But it can be used in different frameworks. So it can be used in the NDC, it can be used in FRA reporting, it can be used in BTR reporting, and it also does align with Paris Agreement, Article 13. So the way that it works, as already explained, we have satellite data sets. From the satellite data sets, we derive land cover data sets, and then we look at specific areas of change. And then for the specific categories that we have defined in our data set, under IPCC, we have, for example, forest. You can also go into more details, so you can look at specific type of forest, specific forest types. There is grassland, there is other land, there is settlement, etc. And each of these different land cover categories has specific emission factors. In a forest, for example, a lot of carbon can be stored. In bare land, almost no carbon is stored. So if you have a transformation from forest into cropland or from forest into bare land, then that conversion path can be calculated, and then we can see what the amount of total emissions are. But at the same time, and that was also mentioned in the previous discussion, if a country is a sink, you can store a specific amount of carbon in a landscape. So if you know the area that was before, for example, cropland, grassland, or barren, which you converted into forest area, you can look at the specific emission factors associated with the land cover types, and then you can do the carbon calculations. So that's how we, that's the two different components that we need, and then that results in the total amount of carbon emissions, which can be either positive or negative. So the MRV system components that we propose here, the first is the land use land cover map. The way that it works, and we have more details on that, how we generated this map in the next presentation as well. We take satellite data, we take training data, we generate the land cover map, we calculate the change between the years, we take the emission factors, and from there we have the activity data. It's very important that in the analysis, and I'm going to also repeat that in the next presentation, because that's absolutely critical, and it's, even if you look at many scientific studies, it's often forgotten, is that we need a statistical robust interpretation of the data. So when you use artificial intelligence, and I think many of you who have worked with artificial intelligence, even as a simple chatbot, you know that often the results that come out are not aligned with reality. So maybe 8 out of 10 times you get the correct answer, 2 out of 10 times you don't get the correct answer. So we also need a statistical framework for checking if the output that we generate is correct. And that's a specific statistical framework that we're also using here. From that we can create the land use land cover transition matrix, we can do the greenhouse gas calculations, and from there we can do the final reporting. So one of the main advantages, if we look at how this was done historically, often the work was based on field-based studies, which is extremely complicated in a country the size of Kazakhstan. A lot was done using statistical sampling from also from satellite imagery. So you place specific points on the map and you do the interpretation, and then from the statistical sample you can do the calculation. The problem usually is you cannot do that every year. So that was often done at a five-year interval. And what new technologies enable us to do is to do this really at the yearly interval. So at the yearly interval, as soon as the new data becomes available for the last year, we can do the same type of data processing. We can use the same type of artificial intelligence for deriving the land cover map, and then we can use that for data interpretation. So looking back 10 years, the methodologies that were used by right then were quite primitive, but now we have the technology to do this at much finer scale, much finer resolution, with ever better satellites becoming available, with more and better systems for doing the classification becoming available, and also to do this in a systematic way. So a lot of the gaps that we had 5 years ago, 10 years ago, are being resolved now by technology, by cloud computing technologies. And in that way, we can do the wall-to-wall coverage. We can do it at an annual scale. We can do it in an automated way, which can be reproduced, and we can improve on the systems that we built, because every time we have more training data, we can also look at historical time series, and every time we can improve on the type of analysis that we do. So as I mentioned, we want to propose a system for Kazakhstan to move away from the cadastral survey limited data set, use satellite data, using our time series that we generate in the next presentation. I'll present you the technical details to and improve on that methodology, and then create an operational annual data set. That was everything for my first presentation. So I'd like to move to my second presentation. And
Let's ask our participants, maybe they have a question for you
that is also good.
about
Yeah.
the first presentation. Уважаемые участники, если есть у кого...
Dear participants, should you have any questions regarding the presentation, please don't hesitate. Let's give some time to think, and then we proceed.
От пикселей к...
From pixels.
This is the work that we have been doing for Kazakhstan so far. So most of the work was done by our data scientist in Bangkok. She unfortunately couldn't make it to the presentation today, so I will present the work that we did. So typically, when we work with the country on doing this type of greenhouse gas inventory, we have different phases. The first phase is typically the inception and the needs assessment, because different countries are in different stages in doing their greenhouse gas inventory. Some countries have very sophisticated systems. Bill and I are both from Thailand. There they do actually the digitization of the whole country by hand. So for all of the country, they create polygons on a map. They have people looking at the map, and then for each of those polygons, they classify what's in there. For a country like Kazakhstan, that's not possible because the sheer size is simply too much. Some countries have very sophisticated satellite data processing. They have LiDAR data. They have high-resolution data which they purchase from commercial data providers or which they fly by themselves. For Kazakhstan, it was mostly an empty space. So there were some data sets available, but these are mostly fragmented, and the methodologies that were used in the past were not very comprehensive and not very repeatable. And as I mentioned in the previous presentation, it's very important to have consistency in how these data sets are being produced, but also from a compliance perspective, from an audit perspective, it's very important that these can be repeated. So in the needs assessment, we saw that there is still a limited capacity in generating those data sets, and there is not a lot of data which is available, but still there is some data available. So for all the data that's available, we like to get our hands on it, because it's extremely important that we have a baseline of what's out there, what has been done, and what are the numbers that have been reported in the past, and how can we replicate that as best as possible. Then there is the analysis and system development, the reporting and validation, and the capacity building and dissemination. And we are currently around between phase 3 and phase 4 in the project. So in phase 1, we did the inception and needs assessment. We looked at different data products that are available, which were mostly the global data products, which you can see here. So here you can see our 2024 map. You can see a map which is called Dynamic World, one from ESA, one from scientific literature. And well, the colors, they differ, but if you do a simple area calculation, so if you take the map and you do an area calculation on each of those maps, you will see that forest area is going to be very different, sometimes up to factor 5 difference. So these are not very consistent, but also if you have a time series of maps, these time series are often also not very systematic. So if you take, for example, Dynamic World, which can be generated for multiple years, if you take a 2022 map and a 2024 map, and you do a comparison in forest area, there might be huge areas that are gone in the map. So it's very important that these data sets are grounded in local training data because they contain information from many different parts of the world. If you train them with data from other regions, the results are usually not very robust. So, but still, it's great to have those maps as a reference frame because in the end, they do a good job in giving a global overview of where the different locations are. One of the key components in creating those maps is collecting training data. Because we need to train the AI algorithm what is what. So we need to explain to the algorithm using satellite images, this is a forest, this is barrelland, this is grassland, this is settlement, etc. We had different people doing interpretation on satellite images, on historical satellite images, so just putting points on the map. At the same time, we also used computer vision algorithms for looking at street level information and then doing the creating training data points of there. So in some of those examples, you actually can see the roads. This is a good example. So there we just look at the landscape from the road. What is it forest? Is it grassland? Is it barren, etc. And we use that for training point generation. And you can see that in the training data set we have 94,512 points, which is still on the smaller side. Typically we like to use with millions of data points for training these type of algorithms. But that's just one of the limitations working with a country this size, having limited field studies being done in the past. Then this is the technical workflow that we apply. So for the people familiar with remote sensing, we have the input data sources. So we have satellite images, we have embedding data sets, and then we have the reference data set. Reference data set is the point data set that we just looked at. From that, we have a machine learning AI pipeline to create different maps. So we create a map for forest, we create a map for cropland, we create a map for grassland, wetland, settlement, for snow, etc. And then in the end, we combine them together in a final map. So this is the different maps that we generate. So this is for the year, I think, 2024. So here you can see this is other land, water, wetlands, broadleaf forest, conifer forest, grassland, etc. So this is the type of maps. This is a likelihood or a probability map, but this is what we generate for each of the years. So if the color is blue in the case of water, it means it's high probability, it's water. If the color is green in the case of forest, it means there is a high probability this is forest. And we basically build all these different data layers and then combine the different data layers into a final map. So there is also a link included in the presentation here. So for people who want to take a look at the time series that we've generated so far, please visit this link. You can also toggle between different years. And then you can make a comparison of these different years. This is one of our initial results, so we are still working on the refinement of the maps. So in this case, we see the brown color on the map, so that's all classified as barren and other lands. Then we have a large yellow area, which is our cropland. Blue is the water. We have some wetlands, some forests. And for forest, we actually have two different categories. We have broadleaf forest and we have conifer forest. As I mentioned, we generated this time series for 20 years, so we have these data sets for 2004 to 2024. You can see that in general, the difference in distribution is quite the same. So we have most area in other lands, then we have a large portion in grassland, we have a large portion in cropland, but then you can also see that these bars, they change between years. So for some years we have a lot of cropland, for other years we have less cropland. That's something that our data scientists are currently looking into. So what are these specific change trajectories? What we have seen so far is in some of the results there is confusion between cropland and grassland, or between grassland and other lands, because some years you might have more rain than other years. So even in a barren land you might have an expansion of maybe some vegetation growth, which is being picked up by the satellite. So that's all the different change information that we're looking at, and that we are interested in. The phase 4, so what we are now going to do is the accuracy assessment. So we're looking at what are the areas of change, what are the areas that are stable. We put points in those areas and we do an interpretation on those points. Because to make this methodology that we present here actually grounded in reality and not just a scientific exercise or computer vision task, is we need to do the validation of all the points that we've generated. We cannot look at all the locations of the map, so we need to generate a statistical sample over those areas, and we're going to do an interpretation of is our map correct in those areas, and is the change that we see in the maps that we generate, is it also the real change that we see in the satellite images? So did those changes actually happen in the map? Because that's how we do the calculation on the areas, and that's also how we do the calculations on the carbon estimations. This is an example of what our people in Thailand are currently working on. So here you see an interface of a tool called Collector Online. So from the map, we generate a point. For example, when the map says forest, we really want to know, is this point forest? And then we're going to look at the satellite image, and we check on the satellite image what the specific land cover type is. In this case, we are most likely looking at some cropland area, and then we make a comparison. What's in the map, what's in our statistical sample, what's the accuracy, what are the actual area estimates that follow from that, and then multiply that by the emission factors, and then do the final carbon calculations. And then in June, July, we are planning to come back and hand over this methodology to the country. So we have developed a training program for all the different steps. So using cloud computing for generating the satellite image data, then using the machine learning and AI for creating the land cover maps, and then doing a stratification, doing a sample interpretation, and doing the final calculations. Because for us it's very important that the ownership of the methodology lies within Kazakhstan, and that the methodologies that we have applied, which are in compliance with the best guidelines and the IPCC guidelines, are being implemented so that these data sets can be improved, methodologies can be improved, uncertainties can be smaller, and then these numbers from land cover change can be used for the NDC, can be used for the UNFCCC reporting, but can also be used, for example, to look at mitigation options from land cover. to use land cover as a carbon sink in Kazakhstan, because there is a lot of potential here. Thank you.
Спасибо. Thank you, Ata, for brilliant two presentations on the MRV approaches for the sector of LULUCF. Уважаемые коллеги, если будут вопросы,
Dear participants, should you have any questions, you can raise your hand and ask the question.
мы будем двигаться дальше.
We are going to move on, and as we've already said, one of the distinctive processes on the development of updated NDC up to 2035 was the approach on MAC analysis. This analysis is quite famous and commonly used tool when we plan climate actions. This analysis helps us to understand the potential for reduction of greenhouse gases at the country level, which measures would be in priority and how much it would cost. I guess you would be interested in knowing the results of this approach, and let me now invite here the Executive Director of KazGER, Baltabayev Kuanesh. Please, the floor is yours. Good day. As it was already mentioned before, the objective of KazGER task was to develop the marginal abatement cost curve to make the priorities of the projects on decarbonization and to define the potential, how much emissions, to what extent emissions could be reduced and in which sectors. So the data that we worked on were used in the development of NDC. Now we want to show you the results. First of all, we tried to identify the sectors that would be the main pollutants. The largest sector is energy sector. And here, let me tell you that when we speak about energy sector, I mean all types of production or generation of heating energy, thermal energy, and so on. We speak not only about power plants, but we speak about different boilers, ovens that would be used at metallurgy sector, at oil and gas sector, any processes within which the energy could be used. This sector is under energy sector, and it takes the biggest share, about 80% of all emissions of GHG in the country. Then we have agriculture and industrial processes. We have emission trading system, and in general, in our project, we focused more on regulated sectors. If we take regulated sectors, the largest are electric energy sector. Here, this sector, we speak about different power plants, boilers, those that are responsible for heating, and they have more than lots of tons of CO2 per year, 20,000. And here we can see 94 million tons. And, you know, for us, it was a very interesting work. You know, despite the fact of energy generation, the emissions in this sector are reducing, although this is a big pollutant. And this is the sector where, if we compare with other sectors, we see in other sectors they have less emissions. However, these emissions are growing in the other sectors. But when we speak about energy sector, from year to year, this sector reduces its emissions. Maybe it is related with the fact that number of different facilities working with renewable energy sources is growing. I mean, it's not the subject of our study. However, as ECOGER, we all the time proposed to the government to rethink of this coefficient of emission. We have the coefficient 0.85, but this was calculated in 2013, and nowadays, when we have so many low carbon energy producing facilities, this coefficient shall be recalculated or changed. That was our proposal. The other large sectors responsible for these challenges is oil and gas sector and metallurgy sector. Altogether, electric energy, metallurgy, oil and gas sector, they have about 93% of all these emissions. These are 5 sectors. We also use the other sector, household utilities. Maybe they do not have lots of emissions. However, we have a tendency that over the last 3 years, this sector became the main consumer of heating and electric energy. You know, the largest energy consumer in other countries is industrial sector, but Kazakhstan here has a different trend, because for us, the public utilities sector consumes more energy rather than other sectors. Here you can see the general assessment. About 17% of generated energy is used by public utilities sector, 34% of heating. So this public utilities sector is the largest actor, and it impacts the trajectory of emissions. If we see that public utilities sector would have more energy efficiency and so on, it means that here we might see the reduction in consumption and therefore reduction of greenhouse gases. Speaking about MAC, about the curves, cost curve, traditionally MAC analysis means developing feasibility study. Usually, we had, or before we had the top-down approaches, when experts would make a decision, or, for example, they would take transport electrification, and then they decided to calculate, to electrify the transport, we need to have this capex, let's say $1 million. Then we will have OPEX operational to buy electric energy, to serve all these stations and so on, the other amount of money. And this sector would earn this amount of money. But then everything is being implemented, and then we see NPV and IRR. NPV is a net present value, so how much this project would earn finally, and we need to calculate NPV so that to understand the economic features, because you know, in economic theory, money today is more expensive than money tomorrow, and then we look at the IRR. Internal rate of return, and ideally IRR should cover inflation and should cover a bank rate. Usually when you calculate the life cycle of the project, for example, you have 25 years of your project, and then you would do the discounting of cash flows, and then ideally your NPV and IRR shall cover all these things. If it doesn't cover, then you have this carbon margin, and then you see what would be the price for the carbon so that your project would be economically profitable. But let me say, This is the ideal classical MAC analysis. However, within our study, we decided to move away a bit from this approach. We saw that some MACs were developed for the roadmap on implementation of NDC 2.0. MAC analysis was conducted to define how to develop strategy of achieving carbon neutrality. However, finally, all of these calculations were just on paper, because then, when it was the approval stage of the project, stakeholders told us, and some private sectors told us, that it doesn't work. There are lots of barriers, lots of regulatory issues, receiving permissions, permits, and so on and so forth. So within our project, we use not top-down approach, but bottom-top approach. We started to ask companies the projects that they are planning to implement by 2035. And based on this, we decided not to calculate IRR and NPV, because of course, this is a trading secret or commercial secret, and company is not ready to disclose all this information. So that's why we took only CAPEX, OPEX of this project, and we calculated estimated profit for this the other project. Then we had the specific targets. We said that 7 years would be the return period. If you look at the energy sector now, you might see that even for projects that are with gigawatt, they would also have this carbon margin, so that to be profitable. You know, PPA contract is a long one for 20 years, but our task that this gigawatt project should bring return within 7 years. And of course, for these 7 years, these carbon searches should be about $20, so carbon price adder, carbon searchers. So these are all important moments, and we wanted to do this disclaimer and to speak about it right now, because our further indicators, they're very critical. That volume of reduction that we show is not maximum volume of reduction, but this is a volume that could be achieved over 10 years when we increase these carbon searches, or when we see the changes in tariff regulation. We have analyzed about 120 measures in energy sector, and most of these measures are related with the transformation of energy sector, when we implement lots of renewable energy sources. As for NDC, in NDC they have about 11 million ton of CO2. All other measures are modernization, replacement of boilers, increase of KPI, and so on and so forth. In metallurgy sector is a sector which showed lots of measures with negative price. All negative price in MAC analysis are considered as projects that could be implemented with the current policy. So you don't need to change any terms. If you have a negative price for carbon, it means that by implementing this project, you would earn. So it's, let me give you an example. Let's say you change some burners in the oven, you increase efficiency of this oven, and then you have less coal combustion, you buy less resources of this, and then you spend less money, let's say. And this money would be enough to implement your projects on modernization. Then you see some bars, you see something that is lower y-axis, and this means these activities could be implemented right now, even with this low price for carbon. Then you see projects that are along x-axis. It means this project would be implemented even with zero price, and everything that is higher than the x-axis. It means you need to have some carbon surcharge. It means you need to sell carbon units, or maybe if you have offset project that is outside your facility, you need to produce carbon units, carbon offsets, and then sell them so that to compensate your expenses. In general, you can see that we've analyzed about 160 measures in metallurgy sector. Out of them, 127, almost 2/3 of all these events and activities, they have negative price. These are the projects that could be implemented now for reducing greenhouse gases. So we say that these measures with negative price, if they would be implemented, it would be about 5 million CO2 tons annually reduced. As for oil and gas, more than 160 events and measures were assessed. Here we also see that most of them have negative price. They are economically beneficial or profitable. Why we have many measures with negative cost or price? Because we came to companies and we asked them, what are your plans for 10 years? What are you going to implement? Of course, the companies speak about some projects that are economically profitable because they understand that tomorrow people from finances would give this money and they would go and implement. That's why many measures, these measures will be implemented, we are pretty sure in that, because these measures do not have direct even relation with the reduction of emissions. No, they first lead to increase of efficiency, increase of performance. Let's look at this map. We speak about optimization of work of some specific water elements and so on and so forth. So you see different types of activities. All these activities will be implemented so that to get energy efficiency, so that the equipment would work well. And then we see here CO2 capture, forest projects. Some other oil and gas companies are planning to implement them. And of course, here they need to have carbon surcharge. There are also some strategic things like hydrogen, but there will be a high price for the ton of CO2. In our opinion, within 10 years, Kazakhstani ETS will not suggest such price. So we saw here two approaches. First of all, maybe we need to have some additional tax benefits or some technical assistance so that to minimize costs of investors. Or we also say that this project shall be implemented, although maybe they could be implemented through GCM, and if a foreign investor is ready to risk that, in some cases it would be double accounting, but if the investor considers this project interesting, it's better to give a fishing rod, and then would there be a fish or the fish would not be caught? That's the question related to the person who is doing this fishing activity. Then for cement activity, in cement activity, actually cement is an area that has less projects with negative price. We cannot do lots of things today so that to reduce CO2 emissions. Mainly it is related to technological processes, because when we produce clinker, calcium oxide, you do the burning and you receive CO2. And the other example is the production of electric energy using coal. You would burn the coal and then it's seized, and oxygen, and you will receive CO2, you know. So looking at this sector, you know, in this calcination industry, or in this cement industry, we have specific situation. When we attract investments to this industry, you could, you know, use all these measures not for one plant or for two plants. You can cover whole cement industry. So we need to build here vertical facilities so that to reduce clinker factor, because when we produce when we do these technological processes, it's just by chemical reaction. You would receive CO2 anyway when you work with cement clinker. All these measures are related with the reduction of clinker factor, and you can reduce it by using some slags, some other waste from metallurgical industry. But this is outside ETS system, and the government need to work here.
So in order to purchase, well, you could have purchased that, but we are in the general or common market. We also have Iran, for example, or Russia that doesn't have any kind of regulation. They are not bearing any expenditures on the carbon. So that is why it is difficult for us to buy the waste and then pay for the transportation. If this part could be regulated so that we could have some benefits, so that we could take those wastes and then use for the clinker, and in order to have the cement with a lower carbon. So I hope that these are the things that we have to consider for the implementation of the NDC. Regarding the utilities, as you could see, there are no measures implementation of which there are no negative price. So we do, yes, periodically there are questions regarding the shall we increase the tariff or not, but the MAC curve shows that the tariffs that we have, they don't stimulate to conduct any kind of measures of energy efficiency. Any measures that you're implementing will not be profitable because it doesn't give you ROI. If you're not earning, so as a businessman, you're not going to this sector. You don't want to be in this sector and work with it. So probably this is the most difficult. Utilities is the most difficult sector because you don't have the price. No one is willing to pay for it, and you cannot really earn on it. And the second constraint is the utility sector is, let's say one utility, let's say one facility, and you have a lot of stakeholders. So whenever you would like to conduct modernization of one building, according to the legislation, you have to conduct a meeting, then you have to have a consent of 2/3 of the owners of each entity within this building. So economically, it is not really beneficial. So this sector is very sensitive, and in order, it has high capital volume, but at the same time, there's more of a social effect because utility is quite old. Modernization will have a lot of social effects, and on one hand, on the other hand, you have to take into consideration that it consumes a lot of heating and electricity. So decreasing the consumption will bring to real reduction of the carbon emissions. So this is the sector that is, we think, Ministry of Ecology together with the Ministry of Construction and Development of Utilities has to work closely with each other, because potential is huge in this sector. This is general MAC curve. In terms, in the frame of our project, we had conducted the analysis of 560 measures. So in order to implement all of these measures, we will need 27.9 billion USD. And these are the measures that has very good prices. But those measures within 2-3 years shall be implemented, and these are the, well, I hope it will be developed, and these measures shall be laid out in the first part. Well, drawing conclusion, in energy, we're planning infrastructural projects. They have a high potential, both high potential, but it will need high investment volumes. We have a high potential in metallurgy, but less potential in oil and gas. But nevertheless, the measures that could be implemented are the measures that are quick, low-hanging fruits, let's say, quick and cheap. And it will bring to the methane reduction, and it will be actually integrated into the capturing the methane, and also in refineries and processing, for example, it could be also implemented because the potential is high there. We also have very high potential in utilities, but it will need additional impetus and the legal framework to be in place and aligned. So the main conclusion. So the calculations had been based, they're worked through, but at the same time they're skeptical. So we're talking about $30 billion, but these are quite 39 million tenge that could be 39 million ton of CO2 that we could reduce. But we think that it could be done even, this is only minimum level that we could prove to be reduced, or to has the potential to be reduced. So we think that reduced, I bring my apologies. And we think that we have to develop investments into the investment injections to the utilities, because in the beginning of the session, my colleague Dana had already elaborated that there is a big interest, but it went to the sector LULUCF because everybody would like to plant forests, everyone would like to restore the croplands, everybody would like to deal with agriculture. Our team also has this project. We're not limiting ourselves to these projects, but visually what we see, we have sectors like the renewable sources of energy. We also have the sectors that we have to provide the measures in order to stimulate the investments. And also, I've already said everything, I guess. Again, we would like to assure again, 39 million ton of CO2 is just a minimum. We think that we have more potential, and we were also pressed in time, so we couldn't work through with all of the companies. Not all companies actually opened their doors, and not all companies disclosed the information, because methane leaks, for example, in all of the sectors of the oil, in all of the companies of the oil and gas sector. So we think that the potential shall be higher here than we have presented. I will wrap up. If there are any questions, I'm ready to take them. Thank you, Konush Serkevich. Dear colleagues, is there any questions regarding the MAC analysis? Oh, I see so many hands. Okay, thank you so much, Konush Serkevich. Very interesting work had been done. We see that there is a foundation that we could rely on. The next stage shall be the planning, the implementation of NDC achievement. Allow me to invite Ainur Kopayeva to present the country facilitator of NDC partnership. Ainur, please. Good afternoon, dear participants of the seminar. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present the implementation plan NDC 3.0, which had been developed in the Ministry of Ecology and Natural Resources and also had been supported by the Agency on Natural Disasters as well as the Association of Ecagir and NDC partnership. This is the plan that is still ongoing. So till the end of this year, we are planning to finalize this plan because we also have to receive the agreement with all of the from all of the stakeholders and all of the ministers. Regarding the approaches, I'd like to mention that when we had been designing the plan, we had used the best practices and recommendations from UNDP on selection of the investment projects or bankable projects for the measures to reduce greenhouse emissions. And we also had worked together. But we also standing on the shoulders of the MAC analysis work that Konush had presented. And here I shall say that key elements. So plan is laid out on has four elements, four main elements. Coordination. So here I'd like to say that it is important to have interdisciplinary coordination so that all of these plans shall be implemented and all of these measures shall be agreed and aligned with all of the organizations, or with all of the government bodies. And it is also important to develop the sectoral plans on every single sector, the transport, agriculture, oil and gas, and other industries. It is important to have sectoral plan in order to have concrete reflection in the concepts, in the regional development overall. Third element is the monitoring MRV in order to track the progress and when it is necessary to correct those measures, because until 35 it seems like 10 years, but 10 years flies by so quick, so it is difficult to monitor. So we have to monitor the progress every single year. So our plan of implementation, in order to see up to what extent the plan of implementation aligns with the goals that we had set in order to achieve. And the approach with the inclusiveness of the project, because all of the stakeholders shall be engaged into the process of the development of the implementation plan, both the government bodies and other stakeholders, and all this process is open. We will be happy to work with all of you. We would like to invite all of you to be engaged and involved in this project, in this process. Here, I'd like to say that another thing, another aspect is the investment plan. It is important so that once the plan is implemented, we could have clear investment needs for each of the measures and identify the clear cost. And also, investment plan shall be directed towards to de-risk, conduct the deep analysis, and lay out the foundation in order to attract investments. And here we could proceed with the plan. If we will elaborate on the structure, there are 8 areas that are clearly linked to the achievement of the NDC 3.0, and where the highest potential has the more than 100 events or 100 measures, and most of the projects had been selected for the energy efficiency, transport, energy, regarding energy sector. Well, all of you have heard a lot of times that this is one of the pollutants and its share is more than 70%, according to the latest data of inventarization. All of these measures had been selected based on the MAC analysis, and that is why we think that key areas of the sector is the development of renewable energy, wind and solar and power plants, modernization of thermal power plants and reduction of specific fuel consumption, implementation of energy storage system and smart grid network infrastructure. And nowadays, I was happy to hear that a lot of donors and international partners are ready to develop the platforms and develop the measures that will be directed towards achieving the NDC, and I hope that those platforms will create pipeline of projects so that those measures would be implemented in reality. Energy efficiency and energy saving measures cover several sectors. Well, advantages are why there are 28 measures, because they're not that expensive. And from this 28 projects or measures, we can spend minimum of means and have results right away. Regarding the methane sector or emissions, Kazakhstan is part of the initiative on the reduction of the methane emission up to 30% of the global methane pledge. In NDC, we have indicator that it is necessary to decrease the level up to 42% of unstructured of methane emissions. And that is why we have to create regulatory framework, which will include the development of a program to reduce and regulate methane emissions in economic sectors, methodology of coal mine methane, which will include the development of a methodology and coefficients for determining coal mine methane is the basis for accurate accounting in the national cadastre. Another sector is the industrial processes, 14 measures. It also occupies a big share of the emission volume. Konch had already elaborated on the measures or projects that are planned in the sector by some of the companies, but these measures or projects, they're quite expensive because it'll need big technological change, and in the plan of the implementation plan, we had included 14 projects or measures in steel, cement, chemistry, compressed air. And of course, there are other projects, but on the slide I didn't list all of them. But you could see in general where I'm going. But still, we have to implement it for long-term perspective. The next slide. Utilities, housing and utilities sector. It is also in NDC. We have to conduct modernization in housing and utilities sector, and energy efficiency is one of the key measures. Thermal modernization, modernization of roofing, enclosing structures, installation of heat pumps, thermal modernization of apartment buildings or residential buildings and private households or homes, and engineering networks of the residential buildings. And I hope that we will be able to implement in this sector in order to achieve our goals.
Сектор транспорта. Ну, в секторе транспорта, конечно, выбросы в основном приходятся на использование.
Next, we have transport sector. Again, here we speak about such measures as electrification, development of alternative types of fuel, and modernization of infrastructure. We can see the example that electrification of main railway network would give a good effect on reduction of CO2, of greenhouse gases. In general, we see that we have more electric vehicles. Next, also very important sector is agricultural sector, LULUCF, and waste sector. Here in LULUCF, this sector makes its contribution more than 9%, and the most important here is to include climate projects, forest climate projects, for example. Well, if climate projects are implemented by large industrial companies, then we also want to adopt action plan to reduce the area of degraded lands. As for waste sector, we want to have the reduction of 42%, recycling of glass waste, implementation of glass container recycling system. We do also have plans We also have other plans. Okay, let me speak about this slide. This slide presents institutional measures to mitigate the climate change effects. We have here more than 20 measures and activities. For example, investment plan development, and I explained why we needed climate labeling of the budget, implementation of Article 6 of Paris Agreement, carbon budget development, national plan, carbon budget, and some measures that are related with the protection of vulnerable groups. Why we need these measures? So that to make the process systematic at the national level. I mean, the process for the NDC. Without all these measures, we will not be able to implement some other measures. So these are stimulating measures so that to further to fulfill all other measures and activities aimed at reduction of CO2. This year, we have concluded this work, and I think we will have opportunity to present the final version of this document. And I would like to say to all stakeholders and to all parties, please interact with us and let us together discuss the most important document in which now we need to move from plan to actions, because the strategy of NDC would not be implemented without any specific action plan. And of course, it is really important also to create the portfolio or pipeline of bankable projects. We also need to think about this finance source for every sector. Well, thank you so much. And if you have any questions, I'm ready to answer. Thank you very much, Aynur, for your presentation. Please, you can take your seat. Yes, we do. We have a question. Oh, that's excellent. Do we have microphone, please? We need mic. Natalia? Interpretation is not possible. Interpreters do not hear the speaker without microphone. Nowadays, we send the request to the government, and this is a request to develop investment plan. Investment plan would include specific list of measures and projects. So we would calculate specific costs, and we would identify funding sources. For example, in some cases, we would have maybe private funds or public funds or some international funding. In each sector, we will develop sectorial measures, roadmaps. We discuss all of this, and as for energy sector, we've received interest from organization IRENA. But again, we have some other measures that are necessary to implement the whole NDC plan. We do this work, and that's why now I'm speaking about it. We wait support from donors and other international organizations so that our plan would be clear, with clear projects, with the assessment of fixed financing or clear financing. We need to understand where we get these funds. Thank you very much. We are coming to the final part of our workshop. So, what we see today? We see that the picture is quite clear. We know how many emissions we have. We know what are the possible measures and approaches. There is a pool of projects that has been assessed, and we see more potential in our country level. If we look at the methodology, and if we look at the energy sector, this energy sector is the largest sector that produce emissions. After it, we have agriculture. I mean, the second pollutant sector or emissions sector. Then we've discussed the MRV system. This is also developed. We introduce digital approaches that would improve quality and accuracy of the situation analysis. The plan of implementation is being developed, the plan for implementation of NDC. And I guess the most important task is to create the conditions so that this plan and all these events and activities would be implemented. It is important to create such conditions so that we would see some incentives for main developers. If we speak about industry, industrial sector, the project initiators need to implement these projects, and such incentives might include regulatory incentives or incentives related to economic viability. And I think we need to work on all of these issues. But there are also measures where, besides climate features, we also have social features. For example, let's take public utilities sector of energy generation. We see the large-scale project on modernization of energy and utility sector, and there are lots of investments going there, not only to reduce the consumption of resources and reduce the emissions, but so that to provide reliability of energy supply for our population, for cities, for consumers. When we speak about reduction of greenhouse gases, it's not always about climate. Of course, this also touches the issues of modernization of our economy, attracting new or adopting or implementing new technologies, increasing reliability of our energy system. If we speak about agricultural sector, again, we adopt new approaches and practices on reduction of land degradation, combating erosion, water erosion of our soils, increasing harvesting and yield of for our domestic agricultural producers and farmers. And of course, all of this should bring to the absorption of CO2 and economy modernization. Well, with this, I suggest all of us to conclude our workshop. Once again, I want to thank all the participants of our workshop. I want to thank our speakers and see you again. Thank you so much.
Yes. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. My name is Antonio. I've seen you. Yes. You know, of course, yes. Yeah. That's awesome. Are you from Pakistan? From Kazakhstan. Wonderful. So nice to meet you. Same here. We actually been talking to, I mean, we have an MOU, but I first been from the Asia Pacific. Yes, yes. And Kuala Lumpur. Yes. Yes. And then I actually met your FRC representative based in Almaty. She left. Went back to June. June is actually like replacing them. So I'm okay. And I will one. Yeah, because we're going to be back very soon. June, because I think they should training on this kind of GHG country mapping. Yes. So definitely we're going to happen because we're also looking at something that is very actionable. Exactly, yeah. So that's something we definitely want to discuss about. So, thank you so much. Have a nice day. Yes.
답게 호용 송한다 작은 스포이스. Слушай, я фотографирую.
Weißt du, jetzt haben wir doch.